Safety that I get so tired of safety training.
Do you get tired of going home with all your fingers and your toes?
Hey, do you get tired of going home to your family every day?
Bigger and better cranes, faster and more efficient mixers, plants with brighter lighting, a lot of changes in the precast concrete industry. One thing never changes. Safety of workers continues to be the #1 concern of the industry. Today, we want to focus on getting back to basics in plant safety. The simple things we can all do to protect everyone's safety and health.
You mean like using the proper lifting techniques?
You mean like wearing the proper personal protective equipment?
You mean like using lockout, tag out, try out before an inspection or repair?
Yep, we mean all of those things and a whole lot more. Today, we're going to divide this video into 5 main sections. First, we'll examine the personal importance of safety at work. Second, we'll review common hazards that might be found in a precast plant. Third, we'll look at work methods to control or eliminate hazards. Fourth, we'll look at accident and injury analysis, reporting, and controls. And fifth, we'll study confined spaces and a variety of hazards and safe work practices to control or eliminate those hazards. Someone expects you home tonight, and we want to get you back there safely. Family and friends don't need a company safety director to tell them that they want you home safely. Obviously, safety at work is very important for you to support and enjoy your family while preventing personal injury. A second reason that safety must be a top priority in all precast plants is the federal regulatory agency referred to as OSHA. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration requires that safety policies and programs must be in place in our plants, and they enforce multiple safety rules and regulations. As a part of those rules, it is a strict violation of company rules for you to be working while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. You will be subject to disciplinary action and possible immediate loss of your job if you're found to be under the influence of either or both alcohol or drugs. Third, in a precast plant, you are working around equipment and machinery and mobile equipment. Machines have no eyes and ears. Equipment has no safety or work procedure training. Together, they have no emotions or feelings if you are hurt while violating safe work practices around them. In short, you must work safely, following all proper procedures around equipment and machinery to prevent personal injury or death. If you've got any questions about a safe work procedure, a plant condition, or any other issue, ask your supervisor or safety director for answers immediately to prevent personal injury.
I bet the list is longer than my family's grocery list.
I bet the list of hazards is longer than the fins on my '57 Cadillac.
Let's quit trying to figure out how many hazards there are, guys. Let's identify and control them.
Lift trucks require a pre-shift inspection by the operator before using the lift truck. Any safety defect must be recorded and reported to your supervisor at once. Use both hands and feet, maintaining at least 3 points of contact when climbing into the cab, and put the seat belt on before starting the engine. When picking up a load, never exceed the load capacity label on the lift truck. Operators should position and carry the load at the lowest practical height possible. If the operator's view is obstructed by carrying the load in a forward position, then the load should be carried while traveling backwards. Lift truck operators should always allow pedestrians to have the right-of-way. No one should be allowed to hitch a ride, and the lift truck forks shouldn't be used as a man lift unless a man lift basket is provided and the The occupant wears a full body harness with a lanyard attached to a proper anchor point. Crane operations require that you visually inspect the crane before using it on every shift. Is there any damage to the controls, cables, hooks, or bridge? If so, report the questionable condition to your supervisor at once. Only qualified operators will be allowed to use the crane. No other worker should operate the crane. Properly attach the load to the hook before lifting the load. All other hooks should be removed or secured to prevent them from snagging on objects. Never attempt to lift a load that exceeds the crane load capacity. Lift the load completely to its vertical height before moving that load in any direction. This will help prevent swinging the load. Don't walk or stand under a suspended load, and keep all operator walkways clear of obstructions or objects that may be tripping hazards. Lifting objects can cause back injury unless the proper lifting methods are used. Have you ever lifted things over and over like these 5-gallon buckets? Why not work smarter and use a wheelbarrow, a dolly, or forklift to carry them and to spare your back? Now, if you've got to lift an object, then do so by spreading the feet about shoulder width apart. Get as close to the object as possible. Flex the knees and bend the legs. Once you got a solid grip, straighten the legs and let the legs do the lifting while you keep your back straight. Don't twist the body with the object. Instead, pivot your feet first and then walk in the direction you must travel. To set the object down, get as close to that location as possible. Have your feet shoulder width apart. Bend the knees, keep the back straight, put the object down. Chemical hazards in the plant can be avoided with the proper use of those chemicals and by wearing of the proper personal protective equipment. When fueling equipment, wear chemical-resistant gloves, safety glasses, and a hard hat. Don't allow the fuel to overflow and splash on your clothing. Don't use fuel to clean tools or parts. Instead, use a parts washing station with the proper solvents while wearing gloves, glasses, and a face shield. Virtually every day, forms and molds have to be broken off product, cleaned, and then prepared with form release oil to placing new concrete. To use form release oil, wear a hard hat, safety glasses with side shields, chemical-resistant gloves, and long pants. Spray form release oil away from the body at all times. Try to determine the wind direction, if any, and be upwind when spraying the oil. If you get the oil on your clothing, remove the item. Rinse the skin with soap and water, and then change the clothing to a new item without form release oil on it. Daily in the plant, you're going to be working with fresh concrete. Plastic concrete is very basic in nature, which can irritate or burn your skin just as harsh acidic materials can. Skin irritation may appear rapidly, or it may not be evident until a later period of time. Avoid direct contact between your skin and fresh concrete by wearing a hard hat, safety glasses with side shields, chemical-resistant gloves, and other appropriate PPE. Now here again, if the concrete comes into contact with the skin, immediately use cool water and rinse the skin thoroughly with soap and water. If the concrete gets on clothing, change that clothing as soon as it is practical and can be safely done. Some precast products require epoxy or oil-based paint coatings to seal the concrete from moisture saturation. Often, you'll be in direct proximity to that paint or epoxy when applying those coatings. At a minimum, wear a fitted chemical cartridge respirator, goggles, hard hat, chemical-resistant gloves, long pants, a long-sleeve shirt when applying epoxy or paint products. Take a look at those raw materials that are being delivered to the plant. You know, the sand, aggregates, and even cement which are used to make concrete. Now, a word of caution here. Get upwind. And don't breathe in any airborne particles that might be generated during unloading of these materials. If you must work around these areas for any period of time, then wear a dust mask or disposable respirator and other appropriate PPE. Machine guarding that is left off equipment when that equipment is not locked out, tagged out, and tried out poses a danger to safety. When energized, often equipment will start or stop without warning. So, belt guards on air compressors, guarding around mixers, and all other energized equipment of this nature should be in place. Again, if that equipment has not been locked out, tagged out, and tried out. Low voltage hazards actually do occur at the plant. Let's face it, you're using a lot of low voltage hand tools around the plant, such as vibrating equipment, drills, chipping hammers, and others. Basic precautions include having GFCIs at every circuit and then inspecting the plug and prongs. Then would be the cord condition. If the plug or prongs are bent or broken, or if the cords are cut, worn or frayed, then tag and take that tool out of service for repairs. When you're using any of these tools, route the cords around any water and do not let the cord rest in water. Also, there should be no hand tools in service that have trigger lock devices. Additionally, to protect tools, keep them in safe operating condition and place them in storage cabinets when tools are not in use.
When are we going to get to the method for the control of these hazards?
When are we going to get to identify unsafe acts and conditions?
Just wait a minute, guys. We're going to cover a few more topics, then we'll move on.
Slips, trips, and falls are one step ahead if you don't follow simple housekeeping. What do we mean by housekeeping? Simply put, keeping the plant clean and in order. Pick the tools up off the floor and store them when they're not in use. Don't leave electrical cords in pathways as a tripping hazard. Pick vibrators up off the floor and put them in storage areas. Look for any residual concrete spillage on the floor. Clean it up, dispose of it properly. Shovels, come-alongs, and hammers should all be stored properly. The aisles to fire extinguishers must be kept open. Fire extinguishers must be clearly visible, a current inspection tag must be attached, and the extinguisher fully charged. Skin, hearing, and stamina hazards do exist. Temperature extremes, heat, and exposure to them can occur in hydration or kiln areas. If you are exposed to these, you need to rotate work shifts in these areas. There's noise exposure with sledgehammers, chipping hammers, and other tools. Hearing protection must be worn when using these tools. Use caution when placing fresh concrete. Exposure to concrete can result in skin burns and dermatitis. To prevent direct skin contact, wear long pants, chemical-resistant gloves, safety glasses with side shields, and hard hats when placing concrete. Also, near the plant mixer, exposure to cement in the area of aggregate storage and exposure to residual airborne particles, and in the cleaning of concrete molds, exposure to airborne particles, all require the wearing of proper disposable respirators to prevent inhalation of particles. One of the most important methods for preventing or controlling accidents or unsafe conditions is to identify them, establish methods to prevent or control them, and then, in the unlikely event that an accident occurs, to report them to a supervisor. Accidents must be investigated and reported by supervisors. Prevention of future accidents may very well be possible from accident investigations. Now let's investigate a worker who has attempted to improperly climb a form and has fallen to the floor of the plant. A fellow worker gets the fallen worker to sit up. After determining that his injuries aren't serious, the fallen worker asks the other worker to help him walk to the break room. Now comes the supervisor's questions. Did the worker use the proper walkway up and down the form? Did he look where he was stepping to? Did he have 3 points of contact with hands and feet? Was the worker pushed by a fellow worker? 4 possible answers. The wrong walkway used. Not looking where stepping to. Did he have 3 points of contact? Or being pushed by a fellow worker? After the supervisor talks to both workers, the fellow worker reveals to the supervisor that the steel bars on the side of the form should not have been used to attempt to climb that form. The supervisor verifies the steel bars weren't for use to climb, instructs the second worker to get a ladder and to place it correctly adjacent to the form, and then trains the workers in the use of the ladder and non-use of steel bars. The cause of the accident is discovered and corrective action and training taken immediately.
I've seen enough and I am ready to go home.
I've got to go buy new safety boots now.
If you two will hang around just a little while longer, we'll look at controlling some hazards.
First of all, it takes teamwork. Every worker using safe work methods to control or eliminate accidents and hazards. There are many ways to build a safety program and culture, but there are 4 particular methods that we want to focus on: training, engineering controls, administrative controls, and the wearing of personal protective equipment. All workers need to be trained in the proper lockout, tagout, and tryout procedures. Before any inspection, maintenance, or repair occurs with energized equipment, all power must be turned off, locked out, tagged with identification, and then tried out to be non-operational. Lift truck training must be site-specific and model-specific, with an emphasis on pre-shift inspections, repair of any safety defects, operators wearing seat belts, and proper lift operation. Crane operation training requires a review of maximum load capacities, proper pre-use inspections, and correct load securing and lifting procedures. Training for hearing protection use includes identifying working conditions and locations in the plant where all PPE and hearing protection must be worn. All plants are required to have hazard communication training with information provided to workers on material safety data sheets and information on them for hazardous substances that may be handled and used. Equipment should have interlocking safety kill switches so that a worker may activate the kill switch and stop the equipment operation when necessary. Machine guards should be in place at the plant mixer, scale gates on silos, head or tail pulleys on conveyor belts, and on grinding wheels or lathes. Those guards must be in place at all times unless power to that equipment has been locked out, tagged out, and tried out. Ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, should be in place at every circuit and be regularly tested for correct operation. Restricted areas for confined space entry should have proper signage, and supervisors must inform workers of proper procedures, proper PPE, and entry and withdrawal procedures. Hearing conservation programs must be in place. An employee should be given a baseline audiogram and then an annual audiogram. Additionally, plants departments should be testing using a sound level meter, and then personal sampling using audio dosimeters should occur over 8-hour periods. Also, employees should be trained in the proper use of hearing protection and where in the plant that it should be used. To comply with all regulatory requirements, keep accurate testing records on employees and plant sound levels on file. All workers should be instructed in the proper use of hard hats, safety glasses, goggles, face shields, welding masks, respirators, clothwork gloves, leatherwork gloves, chemical-resistant gloves, safety shoes, hearing protection, and other PPE. Where to wear PPE, how to obtain it, and how to replace it should all be included in the program. Confined space training is of utmost importance in a precast plant. There are two types of confined spaces. One is a confined space. The other is a permit-required confined space. A confined space could be a tank, vessel, silo, storage bin, hopper, vault, or pit in and around the plant. First, it's large enough and configured so that an employee can enter and perform assigned work. Second, it has limited means for entry or exit. And third, it is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. Permit confined spaces have the previous conditions, but they also contain any one or even all of the following. First, it contains or it has a potential for a hazardous atmosphere. Second, it contains a material that has the potential for engulfing the entrant. Third, it has an internal design that could cause the entrant to be trapped or asphyxiated by inwardly converging walls or by a floor that slopes downward, tapering to a smaller cross-section. Fourth, it contains any other recognized serious or safety hazard. Before entry into a permit-required confined space, both the entry worker and the attendant or standby worker must be briefed and trained by a qualified supervisor. Prior to the entry, the supervisor must be sure that the workers define potential hazards, proper PPE, entry into, exit from, and yes, even rescue plans for the entry worker from a permit-required confined space. Upon completion of that briefing and training by the supervisor, the entry worker, standby attendant, and the supervisor must sign and post that permit at the confined space entry point. Upon entry and later task completion and exiting the confined space, all three must again sign the permit, remove it, and leave the area appropriately. The attendant should never enter a confined space to enter and rescue the entry worker. There are permit confined space accidents that have killed both workers at the same time. Design the rescue plan in advance so that the entry worker can be properly and safely rescued. Signs in the plant can alert you to possible hazards in this plant, as well as direct you to pathways and even exits. Red, white, and black signs may warn of immediate hazards. Yellow and black signs may advise caution. There are signs identifying the location of first aid kits, fire extinguishers, and even eye wash stations. We often take signs for granted, but they are of great help in protecting us inside and outside of the plant. Step ladders, extension ladders, and fixed ladders are all used in the precast plant. There are safety guidelines for their use. Every ladder has to have an inspection, and the correct ladder has to be selected for the task ahead. On any step ladder, you must never use or stand on the top two ladder rungs. The top of the ladder must extend 3 feet above the landing, and 3 points of contact with the ladder from hands and feet is a must going up or down. No matter which tool, all tools have to be inspected prior to use. In some cases, there's documentation that's got to be filled out. Protective guards should never be removed from any tool unless that tool is unplugged and safe and has been taken out of service for inspection or repair. If for any reason you think a tool is unsafe, take it out of service immediately and have it inspected or repaired. A plant emergency bulletin board will have phone numbers and map data to be used in the event of an emergency. Phone numbers should be in place for local law enforcement, fire departments, and EMS ambulance services. The map should specify plant exits and locations of first aid supplies and eye wash stations. Delivery trucks will enter and depart the plant to pick up and deliver precast products. As for cell phone use by drivers, some states outlaw the practice while driving and others require only hands-free cell phone use. Drivers must clarify their state's rules and company rules for cell phone use. The Department of Transportation prohibits commercial drivers from reaching for or holding a mobile device while operating their vehicle, dialing or answering any device that requires the pushing of more than one button, using a handheld device while stopped in traffic or stopped at a traffic light. Drivers in violation face federal civil penalties for each offense and the suspension of their commercial license for multiple offenses. Also, seatbelts must be worn by all truck drivers while that vehicle is in motion and in use. Both OSHA and law enforcement may issue citations if you are not properly wearing that seatbelt in the cab. We want to thank you for watching this Precast Plant Back to Basics safety video program. In closing, we want to leave you with this thought. No job is so important, and no task is so urgent that we can't take the time to perform our work safely. Remember, the most important thing you will do today is to return home safely.